Hello everyone, this is Darkfire Slide, here with a new series today, and a new game. It is Europa Universalis IV, a grand strategy title by Paradox. And today, we're gonna talk about we're gonna do kind of a beginner's campaign. I'm sure there are a lot of these over YouTube, and there's a really good reason for that. Specifically because this little thing right here, this tutorial, is for the most part worthless. It's just bad. It's one of those, you know, find the mouse, click the mouse, like one of those tutorials. It's not the greatest. And when I say that about Paradox, I don't mean to criticize them, but historically in their games, at least the ones I've played, I haven't played Victoria 2, but Crusader Kings 2 had a terrible tutorial, Hearts of Iron 3 had a really bad tutorial. So it's just kind of a trend of theirs. You have to kind of learn the game from external sources, you know, people who have played the game, and people who know a lot more about it. But this is also a video to kind of introduce what Europa Universalis IV is. And to do that, we're going to play as a big nation. Now, to talk about the game in general, Europa Universalis IV is a grand strategy game that simulates, or goes through the time period of 1444, which was the day that the Hungarian-Polish War ended with the Ottomans, resulting in the death of Hungary's king. And it lasts up to 1821 on the day of Napoleon's death, I believe. So it's a game about the age of imperialism and becoming successful during that time in an age of evolving politics and expansion and conquest. Both internally in Europe and across the world, as you can see. All these little colors, you could play as any of these teams. There's no limit. We could be right here. We could be France. We could also be Austria down here, this white. Or say we want to be like this little country right here, Ansbach. Has one little province, one little territory, and all of this. But we could still play as them. And theoretically could still do a lot. Every nation in this game, with the exception of a few, I would say, are completely playable the way you want them to. And if not, you can actually go about making them your own way. But we'll get to that at a later point. This is going to be a series because I don't think I can cover everything that you should or would even want to know about Europa Universalis IV. And for anyone who's already experienced with the game, you might learn a couple things that'll help you pick up your playstyle a little bit. So yeah, to kick off this series, we are going to play as Castile, which was the ruling house of Spain, I believe, before it became Spain. As you can see, we have Granada down here, the entire country of Granada. And to our east, we have Aragon and Portugal. We are looking at the game in political map mode, which is the map mode I like to do. The game seems to want to put you in terrain map mode, and it's pretty. But for all intents and purposes, terrain map mode is pretty useless. I usually have it turned off. There is a simplified terrain map mode you can turn on within the game itself. That is a lot more useful because terrain plays a big part in learning your in military. And in war and conquest and fighting, terrain has a big role to play. But we're more concerned with the political map mode, and the reason for that is because it gives clear, defined borders and colors, nice, pretty colors for countries. So I like to play with the political map mode on basically at almost all times. And this is all before we even get into the game. There are a couple of other map modes to consider here. Obviously, you have your religious map mode. The Holy Roman Empire has its own map mode, so you know what's part of the Holy Roman Empire, but that's a completely different topic for another day. Trade. There are trade areas in the game, and there's a map mode specifically for that. And one of the most useful map modes we have is the diplomatic map mode, which is going to show us our country, who we're friendly with, who we're at war with, and other useful information that we'll get to in just a minute. So let's go ahead. We're going to... and to play any country, you can pick on... Or you can click on any, you can pick on a nation to play it. No, you click on a nation that you want. These right here is basically a list of recommended nations. So we want to play as Castile. If we want to play as Castile, we could click on their country or their flags right here. And it'll tell you that this is an interesting choice during this period. And there's a reason that they have that. You may also notice up here in the top left that we have an option of historical starts. Now, all of these are on the exact same day in 1444. So why do they exist? Well, the one we currently have selected is the rise of the Ottomans. And we get a lot of really, some cool historical flavor text, kind of describing the situation and all of the interesting, quote-unquote countries that it would be, that you would have the most likelihood of success during this game playing. But if we click on this one, Empires of the Sands, it's going to recommend not that we play as Castile or France, but that we play as perhaps the nation of Songhai, or Ethiopia, or Morocco, or Mali. Again, we could play as any of these. Even if we're on the rise of the Ottomans campaign, we could still click on and play any of these. But these are going to be, these historical starts in 1444 are going to be your recommended teams to play. And yes, you can even play Native American, Central American tribes. They get their own special tech groups and bonuses and stuff like that. That we'll talk about later. And you can play as any of these Asian states as well. So there's so much replayability and so many options in this game. One of the things people love to do is to just do crazy things like somehow be Mali, for example, expand northward and capture Spain. I'm sure it's been done. Somebody out there has done it. So, and if not, maybe you'll be the first one to do it. If you like this game as much as I do and you want to just succeed. That being said, we are going to go ahead and play as Castile. And we'll go ahead and get this game started. My very best to explain what's going on before we do it. Before we actually play the game. So, first of all, let's talk a little bit about the interface. Okay, first things first are these little pieces of information up here. In case you're wondering what they are, and in case they weren't rightfully explained to you. So we have in our treasury 245.37 ducats is the name of the currency. I'm not familiar exactly with what a ducat is, but I do know that it's the type of currency that's apparently common during this time. It's kind of a general name for money, I think. On this, it only shows your lump sum, your total amount of money up here in this, but if you mouse over it, it's going to show you what you made last month and how you got that much money. The basic income and the basic expenses. So it's always nice and handy just to have this up here. It's the most self-explanatory thing that we have. Now we've got next here manpower, and one thing about Europa Universalis IV as a grand strategy title versus basically most other games I've ever played of this genre, Civilization, Total War is another good one. You actually have to worry about the literal number of people in your country that are combat available. And here, kind of like with our treasury, we're going to see here the maximum amount of manpower that we have, or the current amount that we have, and then if we mouse over it, we're going to see the maximum, how much we gain each month, how much we make each year, and why we're making that much every year. Now, you can take what you make a year and basically just divide it by 12, and then that's how much you're going to get each month. So that's how that works. Next over is stability, and stability is really important because it's going to affect how much unrest is in your country, the likelihood of rebels rising up. If you have negative stability, you are likely to get events that will cause rebels to pop up in your country, even if you don't have any revolt risk at all, or unrest as it's called now. So it's always important to keep this up, and we'll talk about that as it becomes relevant. But there's a little indicator up here, and that's what that means. Next is our prestige, which is another type of I would almost call prestige a resource in a way, because you use prestige often to circumvent bad events. But if your prestige is really high, As you can see here, we're getting a lot of bonuses to a lot of different things, so it's always good to have prestige, and because if your prestige goes negative, then these same bonuses start to become penalties. We really don't want that. Next over, past the prestige, is our legitimacy. Legitimacy is, in the case of a kingdom, which is, I would say, probably a good 80% of all of the nations in this game are kingdoms of one kind or another. You have legitimacy, and the legitimacy is it's a score representing the you know, how much of a rightful claim to the throne of your country that your current leader has. The majority of the time, you're going to have a lot, you know, most of your legitimacy. And as long as your legitimacy is over 50, you're doing fine. As you can see, we get a lot of bonuses for doing this. We get unrest -3 across our nation, and just all these other nice little bonuses. The last thing here, and this was something that confounded me for a long time. I didn't really understand how it worked. This is power projection. Power projection is, I think it's supposed to represent your country's like growth, like because power projection, you get it for doing things like beating your rivals. And doing anything involving your rivals. It's saying, you know, I am superior compared to my rivals, more than anything else. And really, there are only two particularly important things about power projection. If you have 25 power, and it tells you here on the overlay, you know, if you have at least 25 power projection, you gain a bonus leader without upkeep. And I'll talk about what that means when we start worrying about warfare and getting a general. And if you have at least 50 power projection, we're going to get a bonus to each of our monarch points every month, which I'll talk about now. So in addition to our gold, our ducats, and our treasury, we also have to worry about power, as it's called, through what are called monarch points. And we use these for a variety of things. We use these to lower unrest, reduce inflation for our nation's economy. In a longer war, we would have to worry about the, you know, issues of our people getting exhausted. We would spend this type here, diplomatic power, to reduce that exhaustion that our people have for the war. And then last is military power, which is going to give us the ability to use generals, put down rebellions before they happen, and things of that nature. So it's very important to always have these, and we'll talk a little bit about the exchange of these as we get to them. Lastly, we have a count up here of how many merchants we have, which is going to affect our income depending on how we use them. Trade is very complicated. I might even devote an entire episode to it, that which I understand, because even playing almost 200 hours now, I still do not fully understand trade. And if there's anything if you're an experienced player and you don't understand something, I highly recommend just going to the wiki for EU4 and looking it up. And yeah, we've got 4 types of basically people we can use. We've got merchants, colonists, which make colonies, diplomats, which are going to do things with other countries, and missionaries, which are going to convert provinces to our religion. Okay, so now that we've covered all this information here, which has taken me, 10 minutes, next we're going to worry about all of these pop-ups here. So first of all, we have too few rivals. Now, rivals are important because they're directly related to power projection. We're actually losing power projection every year because we don't have enough rivals. Now, when you think about rivals, and we're going to keep on our political map mode here because we really want to know, who we want to go up against. And so you're going to click this in your diplomacy tab when you open this, or you can just click the button here, and then you just click on these, and it gives you a list of your rivals. When you pick rivals, typically what you want to do is you want to pick a rival that you're going to be able to at least hold your ground against in a potential war. So, for us, a really good rival would be Aragon. It even tells you that they are weaker than you. Aragon is 41% weaker on land than we are, and 12% weaker in terms of naval power. So they're going to be a great rival for us because we're going to be able to attack them, basically without taking many penalties for it. So we're going to pick Aragon as our first rival. Next on our list, a definite must, is Morocco. We are 58% stronger than them in both army and navy. And Morocco is going to be a great rival because not only are they weaker than us, they are also Muslim, which is going to give us bonus authority with the papacy as time passes. So we're going to pick Morocco as our last rival. And then as our final rival, we have kind of a tough choice. And this is what we want to think about in Europa. You know, how relevant is it going to be, the kind of people we attack and the kind of people we rival? If we rival with France, we aren't going to be able to fight them for a while, but they aren't going to be able to fight us either. France is stronger than us, in army at least. That being said, France typically does become very powerful. We have to think about that, you know, as we choose them as a rival. Now, we could choose England as a rival as well, but do we really want to pick them as a rival? I don't think we do, because they are so far away from us that we're never basically going to have to worry about engaging them in any sort of conflict of any description. And what about Portugal? Well, we could choose Portugal as a rival. And really we wouldn't get punished too much for doing that. Their navy is stronger than ours, but our army is stronger than theirs. So it may be in our best interest to make them a rival and attack them. On the other hand, we could try to ally with them instead. So I think we're going to go with France, even though they are stronger with us at the moment. They'll be a good rival for us that we can defeat. Hopefully someday, when we become stronger. Because most nations start out, and they have their work cut out for them before they become a major power. Now, as Castile, we start out as a major power, so it's not really a big deal. Anyway, we have all three of our rivals selected. We have Aragon, Morocco, and France. And as you can see, now we have power projection. And we are going to continue to gain power projection so long as we have three rivals. It'll, tell you, has long time rivals. And as you can see, kind of like with prestige, we get small bonuses to everything as long as we have power projection, in addition to those 2 points we talked about at 25 and 50. Okay, so that takes care of our rivals. Next on our to-do list up here is advisors. Advisors are directly tied to these power stats we were talking about. So it's going to be useful for us to think about getting an advisor because they tend to increase the income of those types of power. And we won't go too in-depth with the strategy here because this is an introductory video. We will talk about it later. But basically, we want to focus on, for the time being, military and we'll say diplomacy as well. Because diplomacy has everything to do with our navy, and military has everything to do with our, military, of course, with our army. So, when you click the open slot, it's going to give you a list of advisors. It's going to tell you how much upfront it costs to hire them, how much monthly it's going to cost. As you can see, we make 14 ducats a month right now. So, 1 ducat a month for an advisor is not going to hurt us at all. I won't delve too much into it, but we're going to pick this guy who gives us a better diplomatic reputation. And then we're going to choose, let's see here, we're going to choose this guy, the National Manpower Modifier bonus. So, as you can see, they give us pretty nice bonuses. And now we're going to go down to 12 ducats a month. You know what? We could actually afford a third advisor, now that I think about it. We're going to choose the artist. So now we're getting 1 additional point per month. These are monthly values. So if you want to know how much you make a year, you just multiply it by 12. It's simple math. Now, this is a good point to get into how monarchs work. We are in a kingdom, so that means this guy is going to be King Juan II de Trastamara. I probably completely butchered that, but that's okay. He has a 1 in administrative skill, a 1 in diplomatic skill, and a 2 in military skill. So, base, we make 3 a month of each type of power. His skill is adding 1 administrative power, 1 diplomatic skill, and 2 military skill, or 2 points every month. So, and if you're new, that may not sound like, might not mean anything to you, but always consider this. It's out of 6. So we have a 1 out of 6 a 1 out of 6, and a 2 out of 6. So this leader's pretty terrible. He's 39 years old, which means he's probably going to live for about 20 years still, give or take. Which means that, you know, for the most part, he's going to, you know, be around for 20 years. So that's like 240 months. 240 months that we're losing good points. Now, we do have some options, but we'll discuss that later. So that's basically what you need to worry about when we talk about points. Now, you need these points for all the things I've mentioned before, for putting down revolts, reducing what's called war exhaustion, and probably most importantly, increasing your technology, which is going to give you, you know, if your technology is ahead, you're always going to be ahead of your opposition. So anytime you can avoid spending points on other things, anytime you can raise your points per month, you want to do that because it'll help you get these faster. And remember, a +1 might not seem like a lot, but you have to consider that you got to multiply it, you know, by years, because this game lasts for 400 years. So the advisors will eventually die, but if you think about it, +1 per month for a year is 12 extra points per year. Times 5 is 60 more points than you would make if you didn't have that advisor. So I don't know how much it would have taken us normally, but as you can see, it's only going to take, even with our terrible leader, at the bottom of this list, it's going to say we're going to have enough military power by November 1st, 1451. So it's going to be in about 7 years. Normally, it probably would have taken, you know, 8 or 9 years even. So I really can't stress enough the importance of advisors. Anyway, we will come back after a break, and we will begin to talk about truces, buildings, and missions. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.